All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Osa Katchen. I'm the Chief Librarian and CEO of Halifax Public Libraries, and I'm really excited to welcome you here today for a really special announcement. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that we're in Mi'kma'ki. We live, work, and play on the ancestral lands of the Mi'kmaq people, the first people of Nova Scotia. And as we seek to build a more inclusive municipality, we remember that we are all treaty people, and those of us who are non-Indigenous each have an individual responsibility to acknowledge and address the centuries of injustice, suffering, and broken promises that resulted from European settlement. So I want to thank all of you for joining us. So we have a small but mighty crew here at Paul O'Regan Hall at Halifax Central Library. Just a handful of us are in the room, and many more are joining us through live stream. So welcome to both the people here and the people who are here virtually. For those of you watching on live stream, there will be an opportunity at the end for questions, so please feel free to post your questions through the chat function, and my pal Curtis will write them on a piece of paper and slide them to me. So we're going to go, high tech and old school all at the same time. For those of you here in person, again, questions will be at the end, and I just want to remind you to remain 2 meters from each other and wear a face mask. This is our new normal, and I think we're all getting used to it, which makes me really happy. Joining me today is also Marika Warren, who's the chair of our Board Audit and Finance Committee. So thank you, Marika, for taking the time to join us and for your commitment to the board. You will hear more from Marika in a couple of moments. So I want to begin with a quote from George Eliot Clark. When we think about a public library, we talk about the way it opens the door to information, imagination, knowledge, and connections. And, George Eliot Clark made this quote when he talked about getting his first library card at the Halifax North Memorial Library. That card actually represented to me an entry into an adult world, a world of sophistication in terms of reading. I'm allowed to go into this magic kingdom of knowledge and information. That's the power that a library card holds. It opens up the riches of our vast collection across 14 locations. It provides opportunities to learn, opportunities to escape, opportunities to enjoy film and words and stories. There is so much you can discover by carrying a library card. And, the foundation of a public library is free and equitable service for everyone. We talk a lot about that. We talk about how we welcome our community into the library. We talk about how we try to reach people where they're at. But we also know, and this has become increasingly concerning to us over the years, that a library fine actually creates a barrier to access. So on the one hand, we've talked a lot about access for everyone. And on the other hand, we continue to levy library fines, which have restricted access. Removing a barrier like a library fine gives everyone in our community the opportunity to have a lifelong relationship with their public library, from a card as a baby through to their retirement and into their later years. Halifax Public Libraries has always pushed forward and adapted to the needs of our community members, and we take pride in serving our community and in listening to our community and in responding to the things that our community tells us. And, I can't be more proud when I look back over the last 4 months at what our team at the library has been able to accomplish just in our response to COVID, which came upon us really quickly. We were able to immediately set up opportunities for people to sign up for cards online because our branches were closed. We rolled out brand new services and platforms virtually. We had staff who took the story time from the children's room to amazing online programming for our community. We boosted our Wi-Fi so more people could access more technology. We loaned out things, including iPads, laptops, and gaming systems that we had never loaned out before. We are an organization that adapts. And as we continue to adapt and respond to our community, it has become very clear to us that library fines and fees remain a barrier. Overdue fines disproportionately impact our most vulnerable people in the community. We know there are families that would benefit from visiting the library on an ongoing basis, having us be an anchor point in their families' lives, who are hesitant to visit because they worry about the fines and they may need to make a choice between paying for food to feed their family or paying fines. And the things that stand in the way of somebody being able to return books on time often are things like limited access to childcare, limited access to transportation, maybe employment opportunities that are sporadic, so family doesn't have a regular schedule. There are a wide range of reasons why people can't get their books on time, and that means late fees are often unavoidable for community members who are already struggling in different ways. We've been hearing this from our community and our staff about the barrier that fines create for people, and we've also been observing what our colleagues have been doing across North America. And frankly, we think this update to our service model is greatly overdue. So today, we're excited to say, here it comes, goodbye to fines. So effective today, August 5th, 2020, library card holders will be able to borrow materials without any risk of accruing overdue fines. Our vision is really to be a resource for everyone, and this simple change is a huge step forward in achieving our vision. By removing overdue fines, we can make a positive impact on our community, across our community. The library and our board have been exploring going fine-free for several years now. When we think back over the past 4 to 5 years, the way we've changed our approach and our service, our focus has been on being inclusive, compassionate, and more forgiving. So some may remember when this library opened, we offered our first fine amnesty period in the history of Halifax Public Libraries. Since then, we've encouraged our staff to waive fines. We've provided other amnesty periods. And we know that doing that has helped people momentarily. We also know that removing those fines forever will really draw people back to the library and not have them carry the stress of the potential fines when they come to the library when they borrow materials. So, for this fresh start, we're even going a step further. So we're not just removing overdue fines going into the future, we're actually clearing all the fees and all the fines that exist on people's cards right now. That is how fresh this start will be. So several months ago, when COVID began to emerge in our community, we made the decision that we weren't going to charge fines through the end of this year. That had a lot to do with reducing cash handling, reducing those close-up interactions, and we knew that those could compromise the health of our staff and the health of the public. We also wanted to make sure that if people were feeling economic struggle, that they should not be held back from using their public library. So what's interesting for us is operationally, if we are not collecting fines, it actually frees our staff up to do some really important work with the community. So rather than spending time across 14 locations, collecting small amounts of money and cashing that out at the end of the night, and sometimes having difficult discussions with the public about fines, our staff now will be free to spend their energy on activities and conversations that are really about having more positive impact on our community. And by removing fines, we can also increase the level of independence for users. So fines used to be a reason why somebody struggled with a self-check machine, for example. Without fines, if somebody wants to come into the library, grab what they need, and find their way out, minimizing some of the contact. If that's the healthiest option for them, they will be better able to do that. So since 2017, we really have over 195,000 people in Halifax who are actively using their library cards over the last few years. So that's about 45% of our population. That actually places us at one of the libraries in Canada that has the highest degree of public engagement. But we also know that for us, optimally, we want everyone in HRM to use their library regularly. This is an enormous gift to our community. It's owned by our community. We want everybody to use that. So our IT team is doing their magic behind the scenes today, and they are actually removing overdue fines and clearing fees for over 37,000 users whose cards were blocked. Those are individuals who now can walk into the library worry-free and begin to use the library on an ongoing basis. So they won't be excluded. They will have equitable access to the resource that really belongs to everybody. Now, to discuss a few more things about these changes, I want to welcome Marika Warren. So Marika is the chair of the Library Board Finance and Audit Committee, and she's going to give you a little bit of a glimpse into how the board came to this decision.
Thanks, Osa. So as Osa said, I'm Marika Warren. I'm the chair of the Finance and Audit Committee of the Halifax Regional Library Board and an avid library user like all board members. So the Halifax Regional Library Board helps the library live its values by supporting the innovative services and encouraging collective growth of our communities. The board's strategic plan places communities in the center, and increasing access is one important strategic direction. So the Halifax Regional Library Board, we represent the public, and we're happy to have approved this major service change that will remove a barrier to members of the public accessing library services. We recognize the value that the library has for the community and are committed to making investments that ensure that libraries support communities in flourishing. Over the last 5 years, the library has seen a drastic decrease in revenue gathered from overdue fines, lost item fines, and damaged item fines. The revenue now accounts for less than 1% of our overall budget. And every year, we've absorbed these decreases in revenue into the operating budget. We don't reflect unpaid fines in the budget, since we know that what most people do in response to unpaid fines is to simply avoid the library. In addition, ebooks and audiobooks, which of course don't accrue fines, they are just returned automatically, make up a growing proportion of library circulation, and again, especially after our experience with COVID. So overdue fines and other fees are no longer generating large amounts of revenue for the library, and in addition create negative experiences for both the community and staff, along with discouraging people and families from using the library. I certainly know for myself it takes only a very small fine to start incurring library shame at the checkout, and we really want the interaction that the community has with the library to be positive and seamless. So the Library Board is confident that this change can be absorbed into the budget and funding provided to the library without negatively affecting the ability to provide resources and programming. A key role of the Finance and Audit Committee is to ensure that the library's allocation of resources aligns with our strategic directions. And this is an example where the board is really trying to live the ethos that we have of reach further, push boundaries, and be brave. As Osa mentioned, we have been discussing removing overdue fines and fees from the library service for quite a while now, and after listening to feedback and gathering evidence from other library systems, we decided to move forward in this direction. So we're removing overdue fines to remove the barriers that many of our community members face when trying to access the library. Some of our community members are hesitant to borrow items from the library in case they accumulate overdue fines. Some members of our community cannot pay the fines and fees currently on their account. And so we view this decision really as an investment in the community and in ensuring accessibility. Library systems across Canada and the United States are eliminating fines and fees with a unified message, and that's that increased access to library service benefits us all in many different ways. So this move is based on evidence generated by other libraries making similar decisions. So the American Library Association and the Urban Libraries Council have found that eliminating overdue fines brings more people into libraries and increases overall book return rates and circulation. So again, this shows us that not only did it create a barrier, but it was also ineffective in what we presume the primary purpose of having overdue fines is. So libraries across the United States have been removing fines for quite some time, and recently many public libraries in Canada have started following suit. So we see across the country, and we can put another icon right on the East Coast there today. So for myself, I remember clearly the joy that I felt when I was 5 years old and finally found the misplaced school library book that had been preventing me from taking out any new books for months. And so we hope that by making this decision, we will welcome residents back to the library to experience that same sort of joy that I associated with libraries as a child, and still do. And we hope to see some new faces as well. So thank you for your time today, and I'll turn things over to Osa to wrap things up.
Thank you, Marika. So we'll begin taking questions in a moment. I just wanted to give you a couple more details as some parting words. So this change becomes effective today, August 5th. So beginning today, there will be no overdue fines accrued on Materials Board. The clearing of those past fines and fees for the 37,000 people who have them is happening as we speak. So that magic is happening behind the scenes, and people should see that update on their account very soon. Now, all items borrowed from the library still have a return due date, so people will still get a reminder that their books need to be returned, and if they're not returned, it will, or if it's lost, it will still result in a replacement fee. So this, we anticipate, certainly based on the behavior in other jurisdictions with other libraries, that this does not mean the mass exodus of our collection. People will borrow and people will return. And we have a very high level of trust with our community every day. People come in and enjoy the library, are respectful of the space, are respectful of the collection. We fully expect that will continue. Now, I did want to say that some people talk to me and say, well, my library fine I think of that as my donation to the library. So for people who really would like to continue to support the library, we are a registered charity. So if you go on our website, Halifax Public Libraries Donate, people can still choose to say, my $20 a year that I used to pay in fines, I'll provide that to the library in a different way. And the difference, of course, is that a tax receipt gets provided now rather than, because it does constitute a charitable donation. So that's just a couple of last updates, and I want to thank those of you who came in person for coming. I certainly want to thank those who signed into the live stream, and we're ready to answer any questions. So I'll repeat the question. So the question is, of those 37,000 people, what's the cumulative value of fines that have been levied against them? So that is a bit of an artificial number. So those fines date back to the late 80s. So we had a system where no fines were ever removed. So it's a bit of an artificial number. Among those 37,000 are people who have long since left the community or who may even be deceased. So for us, so the actual value, which I don't have the number in my hand, was never one that we viewed as collectible. In fact, many of those people we know, based on their pattern of use of the library, just stopped coming when they got the fines and never came back. So for us, that's the pivotal element of the 37,000. Is how many of those 37,000 really could continue to benefit from regular use of the library and just haven't because they feel, as Marika calls it, the library shame, which we really don't want people to feel. Everything we have belongs to everybody, and we share it with one another. So that really, this change reflects that ethos that we live in the public library, that idea that we, the public, have all purchased these materials together, and we share them with one another freely.
It said in the release that the amount of revenue from fines has been decreasing over the past 5 years or so. Approximately how much did you collect in the last 12 months? Or
Yes. So the question is related to what would we normally receive as revenue from library fines. And in 2019, that fine revenue, so that was sort of a full year prior to COVID, we saw about $193,000 in fine revenue. That had been declining year over year due to a couple of factors. One, of course, is that when people borrow an e-book or an e-audio book, that book just expires on their device. So it disappears, gets automatically checked back, and there's no fine that's levied. So as that proportion between electronic and print materials shifted, that saw a decline for us. That amount, 5 years ago, that was over 300,000. So we have noted that has declined, and we've also undertaken fine amnesty periods. And what has been really interesting to us, as we opened Central Library, as we opened a renovated Musquodoboit, as we celebrated 50 years of the Hubbard's Library, we had periods of time where we offered people the opportunity to come in, and we would remove fines and reinstate their card. That was very welcome by our community, but some of those individuals then ended up back with fines and back essentially on the outside of library use. So what this allows us to do is to have that sustained relationship with people throughout their life. And as a really valuable public asset, that's the best thing we can do for our community. So,
I saw there were 4 other libraries that have a similar system in place in Canada. So is it fair to say that this would be the 5th, or were those just a few?
No, so the question is, are we the 5th in Canada to do this? And no, we pulled those out as a few examples. I sit on the Canadian Urban Libraries Council, so every week I talk to my colleagues from Vancouver to everywhere, Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, Edmonton. We're on the phone with one another or Zooming with each other on a regular basis to talk about trends in Canadian libraries. This is certainly something that is rolling out at a number of libraries across Canada. So when we talk about matters of social equity, and I think of this as a social equity issue, what we have had in our libraries is we've had fines that for some families didn't impact their ability to continue to use the library, and for other families was the end of the road. So when we've interviewed people and talked about when the library has mattered most to them in their life, it's often been at times they've struggled, at times they've been in transition in their lives. So the idea that access to us can be unfettered, that there won't be a barrier in place for somebody to find their way to the library to borrow the materials that they need, to support school projects, all of those things, it's absolutely critical. And I would say, 10 or 20 years ago, we thought about collecting fines and holding people to account for fines as being the responsible thing to do. I would say today we understand more about the impact of these kinds of things on people. So we understand that lifelong library usage results in better health outcomes. So if we can remove fines and somebody can stay better connected socially, can have better mental health, can be more literate, more employable, that's good for all of us. And I think as a library, we're really trying to look at the decisions we make through that kind of lens. What's ultimately good for our entire community? And our board has shown tremendous vision. So our board are appointed either by the province or the municipality. So we have 8 public representatives who are citizens who put their names forward, like Marika, to sit on the library board. We have 2 city councilors, and we have the mayor who sits as an ex officio member of the board. So the board is driven by the public good. And as we've looked through our library policies over the last few years and thought about the opportunity we have to really move our entire community forward, this was one of the decisions that the board felt very, very strongly about.
Do you
Yes.
think you'll get returns quicker now because the fine is gone?
So the question is, will we get books returned more quickly because the fine is gone? That's a great question. I think the reasons people may not come into the library to return things, or they leave that book hidden under the bed, might be the fear of what's going to happen when they bring it back. So certainly based on the experience of other libraries, it actually meant that people dusted off the stuff they'd been reluctant to bring back because they didn't want to see the fine on their card. Bring it back. Let's get it back out into the community. Let's pass it along to somebody else. I think that freedom from the stress of the fine or even the potential fine is really important in ensuring that people can walk into the library every day if they wish and feel absolutely confident that everything here is available to them. Any other questions? Yes?
So with removing the fines and not having that revenue, will the library look at other resources to be able to keep the materials up to date, like computer systems, DVDs, that sort of thing, Blu-rays?
So the question, and I'll just repeat the question for the people on the live stream. The question is, without this, with this fine revenue, will the library look at other sources of revenue to keep our collection up to date and make sure that we have the money to purchase more materials? And did I get your question right? Yeah. Perfect. So as I mentioned before, we have been seeing a decrease in fine revenue over the last few years. So this is something that our library board has been adjusting to. So we actually foresee that this will not have a major impact on the library budget. In fact, that $193,000 makes up about 0.7% of our overall budget. So we operate the library on approximately a $28 million budget. So it's a relatively small amount of revenue that we see, and we have a number of moving parts, and we have a range of revenue sources, including parking revenue, including donations, a variety of things that fund the library well. We have our provincial grant, we have our municipal grant. I feel confident, and I think the board shares my confidence that we can make this adjustment. We'd already made this adjustment this year in response to COVID, and I think what we realized was this is just a moment for that to be out of the mix forever, and we will adjust our other budget lines and our costs accordingly. So we feel confident that, in fact, the public will notice the benefits of this and not notice any negative outcome. Oh, perfect. Okay. So we've had a couple of questions via the YouTube live stream. This is a question. Was the $20 fine freeze standard for all library users, or were there other dollar amounts before a card was frozen? So Debbie, who's our Director of Access, knows this fine detail better than I do, but I believe in the last year we actually bumped up the limit. So we've tried a number of mitigating factors we've tried a number of responses to increase the ability for people to continue to use the library. And I believe that $20 cap so as soon as you had $20 of fines on your card, you could no longer use your card. And I believe we bumped that up to 30? Even higher than that. So one of the things we did last year was we allowed people to accrue more fines. But of course now there are no fines, so that's no longer the case. All right, so the next question came via Facebook. If you knew eliminating fines was a trend across North America, why did it take so long to make the decision? So that's a really good question. I certainly think it took some time for us to feel confident that we had the processes in place to absorb the reduction in fees. So that was certainly a piece of it. We also wanted to make sure that there had been some studies to ensure, for example, that books did find their way back, that people didn't consider it an opportunity not to return materials at all. From our perspective, we've talked about it, but it's not. So that I guess I can't answer the question other than to say we were quick to do it in response to COVID and really identified that we wanted to continue to do it. Certainly the things we've done over the last 5 years in terms of fine amnesty periods, we've trained our staff who work at the front line to readily forgive fines. To ask the question, does this stand in the way of you using the library? And if the answer was yes, to forgive fines. But that also required people to know that they could ask that question. So this really extends beyond that. So I would say we've been working toward this for a long time and a number of our policy changes, and this is really now the moment that it became clear that everything else had been leading to this. So are there any more questions from online, Curtis? I see you writing. Yes, we've got a few more questions coming in. Okay. This is a good one. What's the difference between a fine and a fee? Will the difference be reflected in the fee amount, or is this to keep accountability to ensure books are returned? So when we talk about fines and fees, we use those phrases. This is a little bit of a library speak 101. Fines are the costs that are accrued when a library book is returned late. Fees have tended to be if somebody's lost a book, there is a replacement fee. Or if they damaged a book and would like to pay to replace that damaged book, it's a damaged fee. So it really is an internal accounting, the difference, but we anticipate that people will still pay some fees for lost materials. Certainly if any of the young people in my household, and I'm not speaking to them via the live stream, but if any of the young people in my house lost something, I would expect them to find the resources to pay for that. So, so we anticipate we'll still get some fees for lost items, but certainly no fines any longer. Okay, so the next one is what's the plan for those who keep books past due date? So we operate on a basis of trust with our community, and we have lots of ways to communicate with people if materials are due. Because of course getting the materials back to the library is important because the next person may be waiting to borrow that book, or there might be a hold on the title, or somebody has a school project on that topic coming up, and we'd love to have some books on the shelf. So we will send people reminders to remind them that that book is overdue. And then if it's been overdue for more than 30 days, it will be sort of flagged as lost on their card. But that, of course, that fee will be cleared off as soon as that item comes back. So we will certainly continue to communicate with folks and encourage them to bring them back. But I have a lot of trust in our public. In fact, I believe that the more trust and the more respect we show to our community, the more respect that we get back. So some of you will remember the old days where there was no food allowed in the library. I might have myself been kicked out of the library for sneaking in a sandwich. What was interesting was when we changed our stance on that, people brought food in, but they didn't leave a mess. They clean up after themselves. They're respectful. If something spills, they wipe it up. So to me, we have that respectful relationship with our public, and so that makes me feel pretty confident that materials will still be returned. All right, any more from the live stream, Curtis? Okay, that may be it for questions. Any more questions in the room? Yes?
I've got another question as well as scope of the fines. Have you ever looked at the database of fines? Did you ever look at the database of fines?
Sorry, I missed that.
Did you ever look at the database of fines? Like, for example, do you know approximately how much the worst offender owed?
Okay, so this, I don't think it's you. But the question was, do we know who our worst offender is for fines? And I don't think I can tell you that. I'm looking at Debbie. And of course now we'll never know because they're all gone. So if it was you, you're good.
Is it erased? Like that information is now gone forever?
Yeah, it's all been wiped. So there you go. You are free. You're free to return and borrow, and all is good. Thanks everyone for coming today. It's a great day for the library. These are these moments where we're changing ourselves forever, and we're really, really proud of the change. And I'm tremendously grateful to the board. And if anybody has more questions about this, you head home and you have the burning question. Send it to asklib@halifax.ca or call the Ask the Library line at 902-490-5753, and we'll be happy to answer it for you. Thanks for coming, everyone. Enjoy your day.